It just isn't Senator Obama who is taking offense. This is exactly what President Clinton said in Dartmouth. Here's the tape.
Give me a break. This whole thing is the biggest fairy tale I've ever seen.
Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina, who's neutral, said this: to call that dream a fairy tale, which Bill Clinton seemed to be doing, could very well be insulting to some of us.
But Tim, let me just stop you right there. You did not. No, wait a minute. You did not.
I didn't stop you. You had to say. Let me just go through.
No, but you did not give the entire quote. And so the entire quote was clearly about the position on Iraq. It was not about the entire candidacy. It was not about the extraordinary,
Congressman Clyburn has
abilities.
been covering this race. Donna Brazile, herself, a longtime activist in the Democratic Party. This is what she said. Here's Donna Brazile.
As an African American, I find his words and his tone to be very depressing.
So these are people who are not supporters of Obama who are listening. Now, let me just go to the Martin Luther King thing, because you had your opportunity to talk about this at the beginning of the show, and I just want to lay this out for our viewers. This is how the New York Times categorized it. In an interview with Fox News on Monday, Mrs. Clinton tried to make a point about presidential leadership. Dr. King's dream began to be realized when President Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act of '64. Mrs. Clinton said in trying to make the case that her experience should mean more to voters than the uplifting words of Mr. Obama. It took a president to get it done. Again, Congressman Clyburn, we have to be very, very careful about how we speak about that era in American politics. That bothered me a great deal. A writer in the Washington Post today, a black woman, said, it's as if you are minimizing I have a dream, that you are saying it's a nice sentiment, but it took a white president to get blacks to the mountaintop.
Well, you know, look, I understand the taking out of context and the mischaracterization. I have spoken with Congressman Clyburn. I have spoken with a number of my very strong and adamant supporters. But Tim, I can't let you get away with that mischaracterization and those snippets. I was responding to a speech that Senator Obama gave in New Hampshire, where he did compare himself to President Kennedy and to Dr. King. You know, President Kennedy served in the Congress for 14 years. He was a war hero. He'd been engaged in many of the battles that led to his election in the 1960 election. Dr. King had been on the front lines. He had been leading a movement. But Dr. King understood, which is why he made it very clear that there had to be a coming to terms of our country politically in order to make the changes that would last for generations beyond the iconic, extraordinary speeches that he gave. That's why he campaigned for Lyndon Johnson in 1964. That's why he was there when those great pieces of legislation were passed. Does he deserve the lion's share of the credit for moving our country and moving our political process? Yes, he does. But he also had partners who were in the political system. And I think it is such an unfair and unwarranted attempt to, you know, misinterpret and mischaracterize what I've said. Look at what I've done my entire life. I have been working on behalf of civil rights, women's rights, human rights for years. And I know how challenging it is to change our political system, and I have the highest regard for those who have put themselves on the line. You know, Congressman Clyburn was part of that movement. So many of the people whom I admire in my country who have given of themselves to make these changes went into politics in order to realize the changes, worked to elect people in order to make the changes. You know, this is, you know, an unfortunate storyline that the Obama campaign has pushed very successfully. They've been putting out talking points, they've been making this, they've been telling people in a very selective way what the facts are. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to set the facts straight.
In Newsweek, you gave an interview to John Meacham, and you talked about the personal narrative that candidates develop. You seem to compare Barack Obama to, you say, demagogues like Huey Long.
Oh, that is so untrue and unfair. Look, if you are running for president based primarily on a speech you gave in 2002 and speeches you have given since, most notably at the Democratic Convention, then I think it is fair to say we need to know more beyond the words. You know, if you are part of American political history, you know that the speeches are essential to frame an issue, to inspire and lift up people. But when the cameras are gone and when the lights are out, what happens next? How do you translate your words into deeds? And I think, you know, starting in New Hampshire, it became clear that one of the significant contrasts in this campaign is between talking and doing, between rhetoric and reality. And I have the greatest regard for rhetoric, and particularly the ability that Senator Obama has to, you know, lift our sights and our hearts with his oratory. But I think it is fair to point out that he has not had a record of actually producing positive change. Translating those words into action is something that is the, you know, the slow, hard boring of hard boards in politics. And I think that people, you know, deserve to ask themselves questions about that contrast.
You used the terms in Newsweek, you be a workhorse, and suggested he's a show horse. Isn't that a bit patronizing?
No, there's a wonderful phrase in Senate lexicon, whether senators are show horses or workhorses. And what I was saying is that when I arrived in the Senate in 2001, a lot of people thought I'd be a show horse, you know, somebody who, frankly, was on your show all the time, Tim, somebody who was doing the press conferences all the time. But I said to my colleagues the very first day that we went into session, I intend to be a workhorse, because I think it's important the results you deliver for people.
Is Senator Obama a workhorse or a show horse?
I was talking about myself. I believe I am a workhorse. I believe that that is what our country needs right now. We need a president who will, you know, roll up our sleeves collectively as a nation and tackle the problems that we confront. And that's what I've been doing. You know, here in South Carolina, 68,000 children have health care because of the Children's Health Insurance Plan that I helped to create 10 years ago.
In New Hampshire, now the famous scene in Portsmouth where you showed some emotion, was that exhaustion, frustration? What was it?
No, it was actually, Tim, a moment of real emotional connection. Those of us who are running for office and holding office, I know it may be hard to believe, are also human beings. And when I spend my time out on the campaign trail, it's usually about what I can do for somebody else. You know, I'm very other-directed. I don't like talking about myself. I don't like, you know, sort of the whole atmosphere of how people, you know, are judged in American politics too often as to, you know, what you say instead of what you do. And so for me, it's always about what can I do for you? How can I help you? And I was very touched when that woman said, well, how are you doing? How do you get up in the morning? Because really, the question is, for so many of the people that I meet, how does anybody get up in the morning? I just went door to door in Las Vegas. I met construction workers who've lost their jobs. I met a man who's been laid off from the casinos because the economy is beginning to go down. I meet people who can't get health care for their families, people who are just distressed over, you know, what is happening in our country. So when somebody asked me, how do you get up, it really triggered in me, you know, the feeling that, you know, that's what I want us all to think about each other. How do we get up? How do we, you know, pull on our shoes, go out and deal with the problems America faces? That's what I intend to do as president.